good, thanks.
Are you ready? Everyone ready?
Yep.
I'd like to call the February 25th, 2015 meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Here.
Mr. Villano?
Here.
Mr. Calder?
Here.
Mr. Bafardi?
Here.
4 present.
We have a quorum. I'd like you all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Lamore.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll dispense with the report. We have no proclamations or presentations. We have no public hearings. So we will move on to the public comment, privilege of the floor. Do we have anyone signed in?
Yes. Okay.
Clerk, please read the rules of order.
Those members of the public wishing to address the town board will be asked to sign in before the meeting is called to order on the sign-in sheets being provided. Speakers will be called to the podium in the order of their signing in. Persons recognized by the chair to speak during privilege of the floor shall direct his or her comments to the town supervisor as chair of the meeting. Persons granted the privilege of the floor shall first clearly state his or her name and address for the record. Persons so addressing the chair through the use of a prepared written statement shall submit a copy of the same to the town clerk for the purpose of maintaining clear and accurate official minutes of the town board meeting. The purpose of a public hearing and/or privilege of the floor shall be for speakers to express their views, thoughts, and speak freely. Public hearings and privilege of the floor are not meant to commence a dialogue with town board members, as town board will not comment at this time, which is solely for the public to be heard. Each speaker who wishes to address the town board and the public shall have an equal and reasonable opportunity to be heard by the town board and the public. Each speaker will state his or her name and address for the record. Each speaker shall be afforded a maximum of 4 minutes to address the town board and public. Calvin Rugg?
Yes, hi, good evening, members of the town board, Supervisor Bafardi. My name is Calvin Rugg. I live at 1107 Sunrise Boulevard here in Rotterdam. I'm a resident and I'm also a licensed architect. I want to make mention that I do not have, nor have had any clients that are interested in the properties at Four Corners that are questioned for a rezone, or have I worked with any similar clients. What I will say is I have worked on many large projects around the United States, some of which have sought changes in zoning and consolidation of properties. The one item that I'm here to mention tonight is that I believe this change in zoning request has not followed the proper process. The applicant, from what I can see, does not have legal ownership or contract of all the properties proposed for consolidation. A portion of the property is owned by the town of Rotterdam. On a project that I've worked on in New York State in a closed city, we sought to consolidate parcels, which included a public street. The applicant needed to acquire a contract from the city prior to applying for consolidation of the properties. And as I mentioned, that was something I didn't see. So that was something I just wanted to bring up. And I'd be more than willing to discuss further and let you know what adjacent town it was, or city rather.
Thank you.
Did you want a copy of this?
If you have it, that would be
Yeah, I just handwritten notes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Al Hutchkins?
Good evening, Al Hutchins. I live at 8 Lawndale Avenue, right across from this proposed zoning change. I spoke on this proposal 3 years ago and voiced my concerns then, and I believe Mr. Caldor was the only one present on the board at that time. Therefore, that I would ask each and every one of you to review my concerns back at that time, along with the other residents in that neighborhood, for there was some nice concerns risen, and I'm not sure that they were all answered or taken care of in this proposal. In particular, I would like you to consider if this proposal to change to commercial on Lawndale Avenue only, that's, I'm talking Lawndale, does it meet the intent of Chapter 270 of the Town of Rotterdam Code? In particular, will the rezoning Lawndale Ave to commercial preserve the integrity and attractiveness of the community. Contrary to what page 5 of the zoning change application says, I don't believe the homes on Lawndale Avenue fall in the category of dilapidated. You know, they're anywhere from the assessed value of $130,000 to $180,000. You know, I believe page 5 of the proposal says that one of the reasons given for this change is to do away with the dilapidated properties. Will this rezoning for this project assure remaining Lawndale Avenue residents privacy of their residential areas? Personally speaking, as I look out from my front porch, which I've been in my house since 1978, I see 3 nice residential houses over there with trees and shrubs, fencing. After looking at the proposed plan, once them buildings are gone, I have no privacy to anybody on Curry Road or coming into whatever structure goes in over there. Will the rezoning of Lawndale Avenue conserve the value of the land and remaining homes in the area within the character of that community? Consider that now that we are residential, and now all of a sudden we're thinking about doing some spot rezoning to put a commercial into residential. What's going to happen to our property values? Does the rezoning assure remaining Lawndale residents freedom of unsightly and noisy activities? I mean, if there's a commercial in there, they're going to have some type of a dumpsters going on, off hours, plowing, whatever. And how will the rezoning affect the quality of life for the remaining families in the neighborhood? Ask yourself what the demographics are in that neighborhood. Do you know how many people, how many families have with kids in that neighborhood? And how does making Lawndale Avenue a dead-end street affect the emergency response time? And this is all part of the rezoning because it wants to turn this into a dead-end street with a cul-de-sac. I ask you to consider that. These are only the few of the issues that were raised 3 years ago. And I ask that you reconsider these amongst the other ones that were mentioned then. The bottom line is Lawndale Avenue has been a residential zone neighborhood since its development in the 1920s. It's not a place for retail business. You were elected to the board by the residents of this community to preserve the way of life that we are accustomed to. We look forward to you to keep that. And let's keep Rotterdam a nice place to live. Thank you. I give you these, but I don't know if you're going to be able to read it.
That's okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Deanne Muscanel. Deanne Muscanel. Julia Longo.
You leave?
I think sometimes people sign in, they think they have to sign in to attend the meeting.
No? Okay. That's it.
Okay, that concludes our public comment, privilege of the floor portion. We'll move on to resolution portion. Resolution number 48.15. Will the clerk please read?
Appoint and promote Justin Peterson of Rotterdam, New York, 12306, to the position of water treatment plant operator for the water treatment plant, full-time probationary, with full employee benefits at an annual salary of $43,706.32.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. I see that we have a promotion of an individual on here. I believe that although it does come with a $1,700 approximate increase to $43,700, we do need that this individual get advanced in his trade. In order for us to be prepared down the road for eventual retirements in the water plant, Mr. Peterson needs to get the skill set that this new position would provide to him. I'm a firm believer of advancing from within, and this is a good opportunity for both the town and Mr. Peterson.
Any other discussion? I concur with what you said, but I would like to add that Mr. Peterson has also attended school on his own. He's paid for it with his own money, that he's sought advancement himself on a private basis. And I think that speaks highly to his character, not only his abilities. Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Valano, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Calder, on the question, clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Bafardi?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Justin, would you please stand up so we can recognize you? Resolution number 49.15, will the clerk please read?
Appoint Maria DeMio, Rotterdam, New York, 12306, to the position of court clerk to the Honorable Kenneth Litz, full-time and full employee benefits at her current annual salary through December 31st, 2017, with the full support of Town Justices Kenny P. Litz and Kevin J. McCoglin.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to mention, because I want it on the record for both 49.15 and 50.15, that these are not CSEA positions. I just wanted it on the record. That's all I have to say.
Okay, any other discussion? That is on the record. We discussed that in the agenda session. I think we confirmed that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Calder, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Lamore, question? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Bafardi?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Is Maria here? I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Resolution number 50.15, will the clerk please read?
Appoint Megan Nihas of Rotterdam, New York, 12306, to the position of court clerk to Honorable Kevin McCoglin, full-time with full employee benefits at an annual salary of $31,964, with the full support of Town Justice Kevin McCoglin and Kenneth P. Litz.
Any discussion?
I'm a firm believer that the court and the judges that serve them should have full latitude to select a clerk that they are comfortable with and can work with. Based on the foregoing, I think that the judges should be able to pick these women to join them and serve them in the courthouse.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Valano, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Lamore, on the question, clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Bafardi?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Number 51.15, will the clerk please read?
Refer to Planning Commission for the report and recommendation thereon, a proposed local law of the year 2015 for the following purpose: to allow for a change of zone request from CBS Caramite Corporation, 1 CBS Drive, Woonsocket, Rhode Island, 02895, for property located at 179 Lawndale Avenue and 950 Curry Road, and is known as the tax parcels numbers of 58.7-3-15, 58.7-3-16, 58.7-3-17, and 58.7-3-31, respectively, in Rotterdam, New York. The applicant is requesting a change of zone from single-family residential R1 to retail business B1 to facilitate a proposed CVS pharmacy.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. As a follow-up to some of the concerns of Mr. Hutchins, who spoke tonight, there is an opportunity for you to bring those concerns. The particular matter that is before us tonight is not to make a decision on whether or not the change in zone will be granted. The decision is not what features the particular plans will contain. Tonight is just a reference of the matter to the planning board, which is going to be fine-tuning all of those things that you just mentioned, and that it will come back to us for a vote on the final package. I do believe, should it pass tonight, that it will be on the next planning board's meeting, whether that, I believe it may be Tuesday, although you can check the town calendar online. Those concerns you would want to bring at that point, and they can be addressed during the planning function, sir.
Any other discussion? I'd like to add to that and concur with Mr. Valano that the purpose of this is to refer it to the Planning Commission. Also, I concur that Mr. Hutchins brought up some interesting points that I think can be addressed on that level. Certainly, there's some issues regarding the taking over road that Mr. Rugg spoke about. I would also like to address what Mr. Hutchins said regarding Rotterdam being a nice place to live. I think what is currently occurring on that corner, it looks kind of like a 1940s European gulag after World War II. And I don't think that is necessarily conducive to Rotterdam looking like a nice place to live. I would certainly look for some form of remediation or rehabilitation to that corner. But I think the most important thing that was said during the agenda meeting, I asked Mr. Yule, the chair of our planning commission, one question. I said, would you like this referred? And he said yes. So I would just like to add that also.
And, yeah, just to follow up on Mr. Baffardi, and the concerns that you laid out, sir, are exactly the concerns that would be addressed. That's exactly what they want to hear about. That's exactly the input from the neighbors that, and I see Mr. Yule nodding in the back as chairman of the planning commission. Those concerns should be addressed, and there's a venue for you to bring them, and hopefully many of your ideas can be worked into the plans to hopefully satisfy the local neighbors.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Al, we've talked about this before, you and I, we go
Yes,
back
we have.
a few years, many times we had conversation. And as you know, at that particular time, I voted no against this project. There has been some changes. Mr. Yule has assured us that he will look into every concern that the residents have over there. I do have a lot of faith in him, and so I know the rest of the board does too. That's his recommendation. I'm going to agree to send this to the planning board myself, so just so you know, up front, no, and we're here if you ever want to see us, you know that.
I would have welcome the opportunity to discuss this with any of you.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Valano, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Lamore on the question. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Baffardi?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Number 5.2.15, will the clerk please read?
Authorize the supervisor to sign a contract agreement with the New York State Deferred Compensation Plan to begin implementing the new plan conversion services, and authorize the supervisor to sign all necessary documents in this matter.
Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Calder, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Valano, the question. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Baffardi?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Resolution number 5.3.15, will the clerk please read?
Declare the following vehicles as obsolete to be auctioned by Collar City Auctions Realty and Management Incorporated, 9423 Western Turnpike, Delancey, New York, 12053.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to have something to say on this. On these vehicles, they want to make them obsolete. Both vehicles are under 100,000 miles, which I don't necessarily think it should be obsolete. I was informed though that they are not together, they're in pieces and been used for other measures. So the only thing I would like to say on this matter is I think in the future, if we're going to be considering making vehicles obsolete, that they should be taken to our newly authorized mechanic that we have just put in the position, and have him evaluate before we go ahead and decide that we're going to make vehicles obsolete. We should have the people that are actually the experts, not our own people saying, oh yeah, well, let's make it obsolete. So that's what I would like to see for the future.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. You know, considering the cost of the police cars totally outfitted with all the bells and whistles that are necessary for them to do their job, you know, it's my position that in many cases it can be a lot more cost effective to replace a transmission or an engine or rotate the cars. Not every vehicle in our police fleet is, you know, running down calls at 120 miles an hour. I mean, we have a detective fleet. We have other individuals in the force that have needs that don't necessarily need, you know, something that is super speedy or in the best, in pristine mechanical condition that would come with a new car. Considering that these vehicles have already been stripped though, and based on discussions in the agenda session where the administration indicated that there were no intentions to replace these vehicles at the time being, I am comfortable allowing it to proceed, as long as that is still the administration's understanding.
That is my understanding, but I'll allude to what I said in the agenda session. That does not preclude the need for another vehicle for some other reason. I can't agree to that because I don't know what any eventuality might be in the future budget process. I understand your concern about replacing vehicles prematurely. Any other
I have
discussion?
one thing real quick, Mr. Super. Rick, I don't want you to think it's in pieces. I said stripped. I didn't mean it was
Well, I know.
missing fenders and,
Well,
I just
yeah.
don't want you to vote and think that I, because of what I said, misconstrue what I said, that's all.
All right,
Thanks.
that's fine.
Okay.
I
But
appreciate it.
the police equipment has been removed from these vehicles.
Correct.
For other purposes. Okay.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Calder, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Lamore on the question, clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Bufarty?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Number 54.14, will the clerk please read?
Call for bids to be opened on Thursday, March 26, 2015 at 10 a.m. for water and sewer materials, plastic pipe, ductile pipe, bell clamps, stainless steel or stainless repair clamps, Ford lead repair fittings, copper tubing, compression quick couplings, and curb box shutoffs for the Town of Rotterdam Water and Sewer Department for the year 2015.
Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Valano, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Lamore, question, clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Bufarty?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Number 55.15, will the clerk please read?
Call for bids to be opened on Thursday, March 26, 2015 at 10:15 a.m. for sodium hex to be used by the Town of Rotterdam Water Department for the year 2015.
Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Valano, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Calder on the question, clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Bufarty?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Number 56.15, will the clerk please read?
Call for bids to be opened on Thursday, March 26, 2015 at 10:30 a.m. for lawn and leaf bags, biodegradable, for the Town of Rotterdam Department of Public Works for the year 2015.
Any discussion?
I would like to say something on that. With the fact that, you know, the town needs to try to be fiscally sound and needs to work on cutting budgets and spending less money, we don't really need to be in the business of selling leaf bags and lawn bags and stuff. You can get them anywhere. That would utilize an employee to do that. We don't need to be in that business. It would just save us money in the long run.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. In the current budget, we've set aside $10,000 for the purchase of these leaf bags. Even if we were able to recoup our losses, having somebody from, I believe it's the receiver of taxes office, selling the bags, writing up receipts, processing the payments, getting more bags out. You know, we are in a situation where we don't have sufficient personnel to man the supervisor's office during lunchtime. You know, we don't need to be providing services that I think are, you know, underutilized for the personnel cost, but also that are unnecessary. I mean, most people end up purchasing bags at venues. And even if we were able to price match what other people are selling it at, we're selling it at a net loss to us. This is an issue that comes up like a bad penny all the time. I tried to cut this out of the budget the last time. You know, I'm certainly going to be voting no now, but there had been discussion in the agenda session that department heads under our purchasing policy could end up violating the will of this board. If this ends up going down, is it the administration's intention to purchase the bags anyways?
I think what was said during the agenda session was that department heads would have the ability to apply for purchasing outside of the will of this board. Am I correct, Ms. Everett?
Yes.
Now, oh, okay.
Did you want your purchasing policy that lays out what the departments have to do for the size of the purchase that they're going to make? So between up to the $4,999, they could receive verbal quotes if they want to place about a half an order for the bags that they would get in the budget. If they were to go above that, it would be the written or fax quotes. They could go all the way up to the $10,000 in the budget without an RFP.
Well, that would be purchasing them. Then who would authorize the use of employees
to sell them?
That would be under the purveyance, I believe, of the department head who is currently selling them to the residents.
So is it?
So then why is this even here on this budget if it can be just circumvented? Or why, I mean, why is it on the resolution if it can be circumvented?
I can tell you why I think it is on there. I think traditionally that the purchase of the bags was in a much larger amount in the $20,000 category. So I believe the RFP in this point was a carry forward from a past practice of when they purchased larger amounts of bags and they were more in demand.
So the only way, just so I totally understand what's happening here. So if, let's say that this motion doesn't end up carrying, and the department heads wanted to purchase leaf bags despite the will of the board not to. The only way that we could stop that would be to actually strip the budget line and put it at zero. That way, there wouldn't be any money to spend unless they came to the board for a transfer to refund that line. Is that correct?
They should, in good government, have the appropriation available. You are correct in that. But I think what I'm seeing and what your question is, what you're voting on, I believe, is the RFP. So that's, you know, what this person wants to purchase. This is the RFP you're voting to put the RFP out, not the allowance of the department head to purchase the product.
Well, let's
You're
just say,
authorizing the RFP.
let's just say that the answer's no.
Okay.
Okay? I'm gonna presume that in advance. We're purchasing the bags anyways.
A department head could, if the funding is in the line, the appropriation is there, the budget has been passed, which stands as your local law, then they have to follow then the rules that are put forward in your adopted purchasing policy.
Okay. I understand what I need to do. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Calder, do I have a second? For purposes of a vote, I will second the motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lemore?
No.
Mr. Valano?
No.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Buffardi?
I'd like to explain my vote. I've been troubled with this issue in the past. It certainly came up during the budget discussions with the Receiver of Taxes office. I certainly questioned the person power. I'll refrain from using the word manpower in that office. The person power that was used certainly came under the purview of Dawn Pasquarello, which she alluded to that it wasn't costing any more money to do this. She made a very colorful argument that it was serving taxpayers, particularly at those times where they're coming in to pay us money. It is budget neutral. I realize that my yes vote is not going to pass this, and I also understand the pressure that Ms. Pasquarello might be under to purchase these bags, given the will of the board is not in favor of it. But I will vote yes.
2 yes, 2 no.
Resolution does not carry.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes?
Tomorrow, the normal procedure is for all these calling for bids, the packets, people can come in to pick them up. So are they still able to pick them up or not?
No, because there
Okay.
would be no.
Thank you so much.
Now, with that being said, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to add a motion to the end of the calendar. I hereby move to add a resolution eliminating line A 1490-4110 leaf brush bags from the budget. I hereby ask that that resolution be made, or at least be added, eliminating the budget line of $10,000 in its entirety.
Okay, I'll number that number 59.15 and keep it till the end.
That's fine.
Move on to 57.15. Will the clerk please read?
Accept town clerk's report for the month of January 2015.
Any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Calder, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Lemore, the question. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lemore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Buffardi?
Yes.
2 yes. I
Resolution.
mean, 4 yes.
Resolution carries. Number 58.15. Will the clerk please read?
Authorize budget transfers by the town comptroller to various accounts for 2014.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. First of all, on the line for the general fund, A31204715, it says going into UCC dispatch service contract, $23,902, and going out of A3120112032 from the dispatchers. Now, I can understand now that the dispatchers have gone over to, over on Hamburg Street and everybody's combined and everything, I can understand that money coming out. But why wasn't that money taken out and put initially into all the 3 different overtime dispatchers that we kept taking money from three different places to put into overtime dispatch because that went over budget? Also, what I'd like to know is how we can be doing this when the line that we're taking it or putting it into is not a budget line. It's not a budget line from last year. And that's 2014's money that we're talking about. That was not a budget line in 2014. We're just creating a budget line without getting any approval. We're just going ahead and making a budget line all on our own. I think what we should have been doing is putting that money when the overtime dispatch was needed, instead of taking from all kinds of places, we should have put that money there. I also have a few other things that I'm wondering about too. On a line general A8160.
Well, why don't we bring Ms. Every up and you can do it piece by piece rather than have her answer them in portions.
Okay,
Okay.
Is that okay?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
All right.
start with the
Oh,
dispatchers?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, with the dispatchers line that's actually the last bill that we got from the county, where they said in February they would give you an update of a final total for the prior year's services. So this is the amount that was due from the county for the dispatch services from the time we went over on 12/18 of 2014 to 12/31/2014. So when we put this in here, the budget line that exists in 2015 is that number. So we brought it back to 2014 to keep it in line, so you'll always know what your UCC dispatch costs were. So we took it out of the dispatcher's line since it was, in essence, the dispatching services. It's the bill from the county. It was their final
Okay.
calculation for service money.
The only question I have on that, being this was a new budget line that wasn't from 2014, don't you think it would have been appropriate that we were informed that this is a new budget line instead of just sliding it in with everything else? I mean, that would have been,
We could do that,
You
if
know,
that's, certainly that's.
well, I mean, I meant ahead of time, before we get it now, it would have been a good thing to know about.
Certainly, we were just trying to keep it in line with what you currently have adopted in 2015 without making it fit into a wrong category. So it's actually named what it will be from this point forward in 2014, where the expenditure began, from wherever it will follow forward.
That's understandable.
Whenever there's a new budget line being created, could we indicate that with an asterisk or something?
Sure.
You know, or bold it so that we know
Exactly.
that there's going to be something beyond just a standard transfer happening?
Certainly.
Okay, very good. Another one. General A8160-2000, it's going into equipment, and it's going out of security workers, A8160-4162, or 4162 is the composting expense, the 818.75, and then 11,027, the 3 security workers, 10,181, to make up 11,000. Could we know what equipment it is that we're
Sure.
purchasing, or?
Sure.
I mean, that we're buying?
What that is was at the end of the year, when we had the destruction of the tub grinder, the highway superintendent had to do a search for another tub grinder to replace it. We didn't know what the insurance value would be. We asked him for an estimate of what a possible cost would be. What he found online was an approximate cost of $150,000. We issued him the purchase order for such, but needed to cover it. What we've covered it with is the insurance value we've gotten back, which was $139,000, and they kept, we were offered a $10,000 salvage value on it, so the check that we received was $139,000. The $11,000 covers the rest of the purchase order. That's for at the end of 2014, it's balanced out the line.
Perfect, good. That's what I wanted to know, thank you. I presume the wastewater treatment plant operator, that it was added to S28-130-1184. I presume that's to cover the new appointment.
That was a correction of a line error. That was
Oh,
actually where
okay.
we had made an appropriation that was incorrect, so we had to correct where it came from this time.
All right. One other one, I think, was all I, for A67724137, and we're taking from West Rotterdam Food for April through
Yes.
December, but then we're putting it into A7724138 West Rotterdam rental, or rent annual. Did we still have, we couldn't get out of the agreement for the rent for the rest of the year? Is that what the situation?
Correct. We have an agreement with St. Margaret's of Cortona, so what this was a monthly fee from April 1st to the end of the year. This was the amount that was due at the end of December 31st when we were in the vacating process.
Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Calder, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Lamore, question? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lemore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yes.
Mr. Bavard?
Yes.
4 yes.
Resolution carries. Number 59.15, it's not eligible to be read, I don't believe, unless you wrote it down, so I'll try and paraphrase it. Eliminating leaf and brush bag pickup, amount $10,000, budget year 2015.
Not the pickup.
Pickup.
The actual
purchase of
bags.
These bags. Purchase.
To eliminate leaf bag
Purchase.
purchases, funding for purchases. You had a line item for it.
Yes, yes. Here,
59, 15.
you want me to make the motion again?
Yep.
Okay. That's great.
This is the 1590-4.
Okay, was it
I don't
the,
recall the
I
number.
think it was 59, you said it was gonna be the last one, so it would be,
59.15.
or 5815.
No, 59.
5815 was the last one.
That was the last one. This is,
No, it's 59.
the resolution is 59.15, but I
Oh, all
don't
right,
know
you're right, you're
the
right.
budget line
I
that
think
Mr.
Joe
Valano
said
drew.
A1490-4110, I think.
14? Yes, yes, yes.
1490.
Thank you, that's it.
4110.
Yes, I am looking to eliminate, this is a motion to eliminate A 1490-4110, which has $10,000 in it to allow the town to purchase leaf or brush bags.
Mr.
Motion.
Bafardi, there was a motion made for Joe to add it on, but nobody seconded it, to add it on to
I wasn't
Perhaps-
asked, but I will
perhaps
second it.
If we just start anew, so we withdraw the previous motion in terms of adding it, and then Mr. Valano or Diane, you could introduce it from the floor as a
However-
motion from Mr. Valano. Whatever the preferences of the person who made the motion.
I guess, how about I just start over?
Okay.
All right. Mr. Supervisor, I hereby move to add Resolution 59.15 to the calendar. My motion is to eliminate leaf and brush bags under A 1490-4110 from the budget. So it's a motion to add.
Motion to add.
And I second it.
Remove, seconded by
Gotcha.
Mr. Lamore.
Perfect. So now it's added.
It's
Now we
added and elocuted as to what he wants in the motion.
Okay.
Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lemore?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Before I speak, this is something that, this, 5 years on the board now, I've done this so many times. You know, in the scheme of things and what we have to deal with up here, it's probably not so important. But, and I'm saying that because we get our money back for whatever we put into this thing. And I'm speaking now for Ms. Pascarello, receiver of taxes. I wish she were here tonight. She could explain to you more as to why she so strongly feels that this is an important program. And I'm here quite often during the day, so I question her myself, and I started watching that line of people that get here to pay their taxes, and the first line of people, when the tax bill goes out, are all our seniors, includes myself. All our seniors up there that want to get their taxes paid. And as much as I try to argue with her about this, I watch 75% of them, without exaggeration, walking away with piles of leaf bags that they can hardly walk with. Now, you know, is it a service we provide? I mean, you're right, do we do that when other places sell it? But, you know, Stewart's gives away air and other places sell air for tires, you know, when you're trying to fill up your tires. I mean, are we hurting anybody? I don't think so. So that's just what I want to say, and my vote is no.
Mr. Raffarty?
No.
2 yes, 2 no.
Resolution does not carry. This concludes the resolution portion of tonight's meeting. We'll move on to committee reports. Does anyone have anything under committee reports? Hearing none, we'll move on to miscellaneous. Does anyone have anything under miscellaneous?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. It seems as if the town has had a problem getting videos to open stage media for viewing on the government access channel. They have been running the December 10th meeting consistently since December 10th. I've had various people inquire. I've inquired myself as to you, what the status is, and these are the, rather than me giving you rumors, why don't you just tell me what is going on with those videos? I mean, I could tell you what people are telling me, but why don't we just cut to the chase?
Okay, what you asked me is, you had heard that we were going to eliminate the publication of videos on public access TV.
That is what has been told.
Okay, and I think my answer to you was no, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Do you know of the reason why? And I can tell you that Open Stage Media has not received any new videos since December 10th. So my next question would be, why not?
I can maybe help with that, Mr.
Okay.
Valano. I know that a while back, we were talking about another way to possibly do this and save ourselves some money, number one, which I know very much concerns you. And number two is, to do that, we were gonna add $10 to our normal fee for our videographer, and he would in turn give us the information, and we would put it on YouTube, and therefore, if you go on our website, you can get this information for $10 a meeting, which it costs us $10 a meeting, and no other costs involved. So, and we also have a new website, and this kind of started when we put up our new website. So this is what's been going on, and I think it's working. I know there's probably been, maybe out of roughly 30,000 people in this community, I think we've had maybe a half a dozen complaints, but and some of their older people that don't know how to get on the internet and make it work. But the fact remains, it's number one, I've noticed a clearer picture, and that's not saying that downtown wasn't giving us a clear picture. I also noticed a better sound, and we can hear the whole meetings now. And before we were having trouble, and there was a lot more complaints than a half a dozen about the sound for the last several years. So I think it's working. That's just my opinion, but that's what's going on right now.
So, Mr. Calder, you are the one that decided to
No, I didn't
not-
decide.
Okay, well, why isn't Open Stage getting the video? If I hand carried the videos myself, would they continue to run them?
I have no idea.
I
I'm
think
just
there
telling you
was
what's
a-
going on.
Wasn't there a $5,000 fee that was attached to the open stage
Yes.
media issue that we discussed, I believe, in agenda session at length?
Okay, and wasn't that money provided for in the budget?
I don't recall. I really don't.
I
Jackie
thought-
can tell us.
No.
No, Jack?
I don't honestly recall.
Yeah, I don't either.
We can explore that, but I thought the will of the board was not to pay the $5,000.
To save the $5,000.
You know, if you want to reintroduce that or discuss that issue, I'd be happy to put it back on again to expense that.
We're talking versus 5,000 versus 120. I don't think there's much of a decision if we're talking about finances.
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's been, discussed here at great length that, we want to have open government and we want people to be able to see the workings of the government. And certainly not everybody can make their way down here. Not everybody has access to a computer or the ability to get onto the internet. However, the thing is, most people do have access to cable television, even in this day and age with other providers such as Dish and what have you. The thing is, I think it's important that the message that's being given, that all of us collectively care about what's going on in the town and that we want to disseminate as much information as possible to the public. Traditionally, that this is a mechanism that's used by many of our local governments around here. You know, the thing is, I guess I'm just surprised that all of a sudden, you know, they continue to run the December meetings.
Okay, let me ask you a question first, and then I'm gonna propose possibly a resolution to it. Do you want to expense the $5,000, put it on open stage media, plus the $120 that we have to put it on YouTube?
That's fine. I mean, I think that it needs to be disseminated. It has to be on television. So.
Okay, I will put it on for a resolution at next meeting to vote on it by will of the board. And we will test that will.
All right, well, I don't see any reason why we can't make the motion and test it right now.
Okay?
I'll
I'll entertain a motion.
I hereby move to add funding, if it isn't already in the budget, to provide for televising of these meetings on open stage media.
Motion made by Mr. Villano to expense the $5,000 open stage media for purposes of television production of our meetings. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do I have a second?
I'm trying to decide on this one. Normally I would say it shouldn't matter that, you know, everybody can get on the computer, but as I mentioned to other people, I just had my computer go down on me, so I would not be able to watch it if I even decided to. I don't usually watch those things. There's no sense watching myself on TV. But if we have a good mode of doing it, I really don't think it should matter. We do want to save the money. I'm sorry, I just don't think we should really spend the money on that, as long as there is access to it. But I do think we need to get the word out to all the townspeople in either things like this or in other ways. We need to get the word out to them that there is access to this. And I do know somebody that saw the meeting the last meeting, because they told me they just saw us on TV recently, and so I know that it is happening. But I do think the word needs to get out. If we're going to do it in a different way, the people need to know the way that it's being done so that they can access it, not do it in the shadows and just slide it in. We need to let them know so they can access it.
Are you seconding the motion?
No, I'm not going to second it.
I'll second the motion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
No.
Mr. Villano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
You know, we just spent an hour and a half in the agenda meeting because we need more police, we have an issue with cars, and you fight tooth and nail for every shoelace that we possibly can have to take care of our people, and now you want to introduce $5,000 for something we already have that works better than what we were getting. Am I right?
Well, do you want me to find $13,000 in the budget that we're not going to be
Well,
using?
wait a minute, that's not part of the discussion. Mr. Calder could explain his vote and then vote.
Well, I think I've explained my vote. I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Buffardi?
I'm going to explain my vote. I agree with Mr. Villano that we should have total public access as much as we can to provide to community members or people looking over our shoulder to make sure government is open, heir apparent. The reason this wasn't sent to open stage media was the savings of the $5,000, and that was the only reason that was not done. I certainly entertain everything to be out there as openly as possible. I vote yes.
2 yes, 2 no.
Resolution does not carry.
May I just say something? I just want you all to know, and the people that are watching the TV, I had 2 residents call me, and I burned a DVD for them because I have it. And I can tell you, for 100 DVDs, it's cost like, $39. So if there's ever a resident that can't watch it on TV with the open stage media, and they do have a DVD, I have a little portable DVD that a resident could bring it if they wanted. So, I mean, I have tried everything so that they can see it. So if you definitely tell the resident to call the town clerk's office, I'd be more than happy to burn it.
All right. Also, historically, I've always received copies of the videos. I haven't received copies of the last two. If I send,
I didn't realize that you wanted it because it was on YouTube, but if you want that, I can do that too.
I do
Do you
want
still
it.
want them to? Okay.
Joe, it's on
That's fine. I
YouTube, but
just
it's also
assumed.
on our website, you know that.
Yeah.
I do know that.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
I just want to make sure.
I didn't know if you
I'll
should.
send them.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Next, Mr. Supervisor, based upon the request of the various fire districts, okay, and upon recommendation of our superintendent of the highway department, it's come to my attention that that the Parks Department historically has taken care of our fire training center and the snow plowing for it. Apparently, the size of the trucks and the area that needs to be paved, it would be much simpler for the town and much more, the firefighters believe that they will get a better job done if the highway department is directed to make a single pass around the tower and to go to the building. Especially considering they worry about being able to get access to that building for not only training, because we do end up leasing out that training center to various other entities that use it, not just our own fire departments, but also I believe that it has a oil or propane fuel source that it was getting low on, and the Parks Department was having a hard time keeping up with it. Therefore, I hereby make a motion to this board upon the consent and also the recommendation of our highway superintendent to direct the highway department to utilize their trucks to make a single pass around the actual tower and to open up access to the building whenever it snows in the town of Rotterdam.
Well, first I question our authority to do that, but I also see Mr. Lamore nodding his head in the back, apparently in some type of agreement. Would you agree to do that, Mr. Lamore?
Well, when I was speaking with, at the fire commissioners meetings, they needed, someone, they were talking about it. And I said, well, I'd have to make, put a resolution in or something to make sure we can officially do that for you, because we use the trucks for the town roads and everything.
No, I don't think that was the issue. I thought the issue that we discussed was paving areas outside of town roads.
Well, they wanted the snow plowing issue down to their fire training center.
And we've been doing that.
Yes, and it was been confused between the Parks Department and the highway, and who's supposed to take responsible.
I thought the
for it.
Parks Department was like mowing the lawns and
They
helping out.
do some plowing too.
I mean, I think that this simplifies it, it gives some direction, and it is the will, not only of the fire departments, but the highway department is willing to accommodate in that way, and it's really no additional effort on behalf of the
Well,
highway
I
department.
understand, but if the highway department, if the superintendent of highways is willing to do this, why does it need a resolution?
Specifically, he asked for it. He asked for this resolution to be brought.
Resolution, motion, are you making a motion regarding that?
I am.
Motion made by Mr. Villano to have the highway superintendent take over plowing for the fire training center, am I correct?
That is correct.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Second by Mr. Lamore. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamore?
Yes.
Mr. Villano?
Yes.
Mr. Calder?
Yeah, I'm a little unsure why we need a motion, Joe, but I would agree with you. One of the main reasons I'm agreeing is that we got a retirement coming up in Parks Department. It's gonna leave 2 people in parks for this entire town of Rotterdam, with 8 pocket parks and snow plowing that they do and blah, blah, blah. So that's the reason I'm gonna agree with you. And I know that Mr. Lamore can do a good job down there. But if we have to have a resolution for every time we get in a plow or plow a sidewalk, I mean, we're gonna be bogged down here pretty good. But anyway, I'll vote yes, whatever that means.
Mr. Bafardi?
Yes,
4 yes.
motion carries. Anything else under miscellaneous?
Yes, Mr. Bafardi. There have been various discussions between me and Mr. Lamore and the developer, Corey Lewandowski, for the Peter Road development. I would ask that a motion be put on the next calendar for reference of that project back to the Planning Commission so that they can put together a plan that hopefully we can all agree on, resulting in a change of zone and progress of that particular project. The developer has indicated an interest in severely scaling back the development in a way that possibly is conducive to keeping all parties as happy as possible.
Mr. Yule, you were shaking your head?
I have no knowledge of what Mr. Valano's talking about. All I know is they tore the building down there, but we haven't seen any proposals and have had no conversation with Mr. Lewandowski or his engineering firm.
It's my understanding that Dave Ingles and Mr. Lewandowski are potentially willing to scale it back from the 32 units that was initially shot down, more in line with, upper teens, possibly like 18-ish units, with a substantial amount of green space, shoving all the properties towards High Bridge Road and pulled forward to give maximum green space into the Peter Road development. Mr. Yule, if you'd be willing to reach out to him, maybe he can give you a lot more details.
Absolutely, I'll give him a call and, see about getting him in. All he has to do is make application and come in. We meet tomorrow, the DPW, so.
Well, I would just note for the record that I think the impediment that's in your way is that we have a letter from the developers council requesting that it be withdrawn from the agenda. And so the understanding after a meeting that we had over the summer was that if they wish to restore it to the agenda, that they notify us in writing, so.
Okay.
I agree.
I'll let them know that then.
Okay,
All right.
Mr. Yule, you'll follow up on your end also?
absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Anything else under miscellaneous? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Wait a minute. One more thing, Mr. Buffardi. Based on the fact that I ended up having a prior commitment that ended up getting scheduled well before Mr. Jasinski and the county legislature put together the meeting for shared services. Mr. Lamore was in the same meeting that I was. In order for us to get tax freeze credits for this town, we're going to need to come up with some kind of plan for shared servicing. Would you be willing to enlighten us what those discussions were, explain to the town? Also, because any of those things would have to be voted upon by this board, and I certainly don't want to have a last minute either take this solution or everybody in the town loses their credits. So can you bring me up to speed what was discussed and potentially what kind of shared services the administration has discussed with the counties and the other municipalities in the area?
Sure. Actually, I referred to Ms. Every a packet that was distributed and asked her to pass that out, to make a copy of that, give it to Mr. Valano. There was a meeting that was called for by the county to talk about shared services to freeze potential taxes in the future. In order to do this, you have to show a budget reduction that can be done as a shared service or a budget reduction that can be done individually. This can be done, the paperwork has to be done. We have to file a plan by April 1st as to whether we're going to do this independently or whether we're going to share this burden with the county and come up with a joint plan involving all the municipalities in the county. So that's what was on the table. I certainly admired the county's leadership in this role. I think that we will meet the purposes of locking these taxes because we have had a reduction of government services, whether it be through shared services or whether it be the saving of expenses through the elimination of paramedics and elimination of dispatchers. We would certainly qualify under either plan. But certainly this is something that we were required to provide a plan by April 1st. I was going to wait and see what the county was going to do to see if it was going to incorporate us in that. If it did, I was going to bring it back to the board and see whether we wanted to participate with the county in that plan to do a total shared services on a county basis or whether we wanted to do it individually in Rotterdam. I think the issue is relatively simple for us. We have had savings in the areas that the state would require us to save in. I think there's other areas, for example, we can show a savings in shared services that we're using central dispatch in a consolidated manner, but the town of Duanesburg and the town of Princetown that did not have dispatch before that actually have an expense, so that wouldn't benefit them in that regard. So it's out there. I'd certainly be happy to share the packet that was passed out to us that I gave to Ms. Every. Our requirement is to put together a plan, a rather limited plan, actually, to show how we intended to do this. The bigger plan is going to come in effect during the year of 2016, that you actually have to break down the savings-related issues.
Now, Mr. Buffardi, the fact that we have to come up with a plan before April 1st, how many meetings do we have between now and then?
The meeting on March 20th.
We have a meeting in March.
Okay.
I just went to this meeting last week. I passed on the paperwork to Ms. Every to take a look over, and I was gonna ask her to make a proposal to us as to which way we should go in that matter. Either way we go, whether we join the services of the county to share those services, or we go independently as a town, we will meet the requirements of the state.
Okay, so it's not going to be a situation where we are going to have a meeting the fourth week in March, which will be the only meeting before this deadline, and it's either take our plan or leave it.
No, that won't be it. We have two options. We can either share with the county on this, or we meet the requirements and do it independently. I will bring forth both those options, and we can decide as the board which one we would request to do. I have no preference whether we do it as a county.
Say by ourselves.
Just whatever way they can make the most money.
Yes. And actually, I just gave it to Ms. Every this week after my meeting, and I was waiting for her to come back with a proposal to show how it would benefit us the best.
The last thing I want to bring up is I did reach out to the individual who indicated that they were interested in the town historian position. I haven't received a return call yet, but I'll follow up on that again.
Okay. Anything else under miscellaneous? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Milano, seconded by Mr. Lamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
He's adjourned. Thank you.